hell divers, brave and true, sail in the stars with a hearty crew. From the depths of space to the war-torn land, we fight for super Earth with iron hand. Evil levels make us stand, with fire and steel we reclaim our land. For liberty's flame we'll fight till the end. Hell divers, onward we descend. The automatons march with their cold steel hearts. The Terminids swarm, but we'll tear them apart. With a shout and a cry, we drop from the sky. For freedom and justice, we're ready to die. Evil levels make us stand. With fire and steel, we reclaim our land. For liberty's flame, we'll fight till the end. Hell divers, onward we descend.
That was Onward We Descend by Rogan Ravenheart, whose songs always provide me with a lovely audible treat. What a happy tune, and so catchy too. It gives me this mental image of helldivers sailing the cosmic seas in a sail ship fueled by solar power, just like that really cool old Treasure Planet movie, complete with tricorn hats, eye patches, cutlasses, and flintlock pistols. That's one way to pirate a game, I suppose. Good morning to you all, my sweetling exemplars of democratic justice. Fighting continued across the whole of the Draco sector last night, with the Thunder seeing a very generous 20% increase to its overall liberation score. Roughly 2,000 strong Helldivers split between Crimsica and Fori Prime to try to bring them to heel, but the decay rates on these planets are rather high at 2% an hour, and bug losses were replaced pretty much as quickly as they could be culled. When I say the Terminids are born at a somewhat ridiculous, obnoxious rate, I want you to grasp the full depth of my meaning. As of right now, nearly 8 billion Terminids have been killed on Istanu, with 136 million Helldivers making the ultimate sacrifice. To put this in broader perspective, that is 5 Malevelon Creek's worth of casualties. So while the creek is one of the most well-known battlefields of the war, it is hardly the bloodiest. Leftover incendiary landmines are making the situation somewhat more interesting, as these things are apparently built to last and can remain active for weeks after initial deployment from an orbital drop pod, retaining their lethal power for friend and foe alike. But given that there are so many more bugs on Astana than divers, the odds are pretty good, though, is that it is Buggy, out of his usual Sunday stroll, who's going to be the one getting a little surprise instead of us. The secondary target of the perpetually undermanned Western Front Liberation Fleet is Coalpessa 4, which is a tundra planet with environments similar to Istanu, but is somehow even colder. Like, to the point that if you tried to piddle on that planet, it would freeze before it hit the ground. Not that exposing your delicate bits in an active war zone is a good idea anyway. The bots currently contesting the planet still cannot reinforce their numbers due to the sea blockade, and the planet is steadily being liberated at 0.5% an hour. Once this broadcast is completed, the Mercy is probably going to relocate to Coalpessa to try to lend some aid and proper violence to the situation. At this point, the major order is pretty much buttoned up, and our resident divers have expressed a desire to kick Skynet while they're down. A sentiment I can get behind, considering the Automaton Collective attempted to murder children at Harnan Wells, not to mention the massacre at Aesir Pass. All in all, it's been something of a slow night with relatively little movement, so let's change the topic to enemy analysis. Specifically, how do Terminids reproduce in such nauseating numbers? According to our resident expert in this field, Helldiver Gremlin, Terminids are actually an insectoid fungal hybrid, and the eggs that divers are routinely tasked with destroying contain hundreds of Terminid forms just waiting to be born. These are created from the gestation of spores, which not only leach mineral nutrition from the surrounding soil, but are bathed in a regurgitated nutritional cell from scavengers' trophallaxis, an act I still refuse to describe, who also gather them up for safekeeping. The eggs that have thus far been seen on the surface account for a small percent of all Terminid reproduction, with the remainder being taken to the safety of their nurseries, which we have been nuking. Basically, every time you detonate a nursery out of existence, that is several billion terminids that will no longer be born. Good riddance, if you ask me. This is just another example of a truly terrible life form that the universe would be better off without, just reproducing at insane rates out of sheer spite. If it wasn't for our reliance on their E710, I would be completely cool with reducing the entire terminid swarm to a past tense entity with their exoskeletons on display at museums right there next to Stegosaurus. This fungal hybrid nature also explains how terminids can engage in spontaneous metamorphosis like some sort of demonic Pokemon based on how much nutritional biomass they have consumed. Scavengers turn into warriors who can then either become fruit commanders or hive defenders, and defenders turn into chargers. It is currently unknown how these decisions are made, but it is especially distressing when Helldivers run into a gaggle of like 9 chargers who refuse to leave them alone and just body unfortunate rookies like they got hit by a bus. I'm told that this is actually what the Ministry of Science is trying to influence with the genocidal experiments, to see if we can't subject terminids to certain states of duress and trigger them to evolve into less dangerous combat forms so that they're easier to deal with. Underground fungal hyphae and rhizoids from the larger structures like spore spewer towers are hollow and also form their underground tunnels, which autonomously grow at network all across the infected planet. When a terminid releases a certain pheromone, it causes these hyphae to rupture locally, and the bugs in the surrounding tunnels rush out in a defensive reaction to protect the hive. The orange smoke you see during a bug breach isn't dust, but rather an ejection of terminid spores caused from the ruptured hyphae, which will make the situation even worse. I think you can see how this kind of thing can easily snowball completely out of control. Terminid life cycles seem entirely based on massive reproduction and endless expansionism, which is why we are just having so many problems with them. It's also easy to see, like, if we let a problem child like Meridia go, the effects would have been fluffing disastrous over a longer time. So really, divers aren't just fighting the swarm, but the swarm's efforts to terraform a planet to make it more suitable for them. As you can see, their efforts are very thorough. Terminids don't have a clean archetype because they just don't need one, and are constantly generating new spores, new combat forms, and new fungal structures, which causes them to be spawned by literal millions every minute of every day. Fortunately, fire-based weapons tend to incinerate the spores and do plentiful damage to this life cycle. On a somewhat disheartening note, this aggressive style of reproduction means that any attempt at E710 farms is just doomed right from the start. You can't just corral terminids and expect that to work out because they'll spread like mold right out of any kind of containment structure you could rig up. And I've yet to see a wall of any variety able to hold a Bile Titan back once he's just miffed at something. So long as we are dependent on their E710, I think we're destined to do this forever. But on the day we discover a new source of energy, it's probably a good idea to expunge this species from the fabric of reality. We are one mishandled event away from having a really bad day with the terminids, and we came dangerously close to that during the TCS bungling. I hear people are still being fired for that. Like, slapped up against a wall, blindfolded, and guys with guns taking aims at them. That's been Liberty's latest with me, the Radio Angel. Let's get this major order buttoned up for another glorious super victory, and then meander over to the Western Front to give some aid. I'd personally love to see us grab another planet back from the boss before they finish rebooting their logistics system, and this period of vulnerability ends. For liberty, for freedom, for democracy, and for Super Earth.